Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. We're going to discuss X-linked recessive inheritance. Now notice that this is linked to the X chromosome, which means it's going to be related to gender. So in these types of disorders, the gene causing the trigger disorder is located on the X chromosome. So that means that for women to have it, both of the X chromosomes, because remember they're XX karyotype, need to be affected. Men, because they only have one X chromosome, they get the disorder if it's on that chromosome. So they only need one copy of the trait for the disease to be expressed. Therefore, men tend to be more affected by these diseases than other ones. And examples are hemophilia and even color blindness. You know people are colorblind if you consider it. Most of them are men whenever you look at it, and it's because they only have one X chromosome. Women would need to have both X chromosomes affected in order to be colorblind. Hemophilia is on the X chromosome. Because of that, that makes men more affected than women. It is about 125 and 1 million people end up having it. It's the most common X-linked genetic disease. Hemophilia A is their most common type, with 80% of the hemophilia cases being type A. What happens is that the body is not able to have functioning factor VIII. So you think back to anatomy and physiology when you talked about the clotting cascade. That happens in order for your blood to clot itself. There is a number of factors in intrinsic and extrinsic pathways. What basically to remember is that anything that was supposed to happen after factor VIII is introduced into that pathway wouldn't, because it wouldn't continue that cascade. So that's why their blood doesn't clot. And that means that what happens is they're unable to use fibrin to create the clot to keep bleeding from happening. In an X-linked dominant disorder, the father has to have the X-linked trait. If the father has the X-linked trait, then all of his daughters will have it because he only has one X to give to his daughters. So that means he would be giving them the dominant trait. But his sons won't be affected because the father gives them the Y chromosome. You never get a Y chromosome from your mother because they only have XX. So with X-linked dominant, the thing to remember with inheritance is that a father who has X-linked traits, his daughter is going to get it and his sons will not. If the mother has an X-linked dominant trait, it's a 50-50 chance that each of her kids will have it because one of the X chromosomes will be infected and the other one won't. So that's why they get a half chance of each kid getting it if the mom's infected. In X-linked dominant disorder, it's most lethal in men. And men who have it, they actually are usually miscarried before they're even born. Another type of chromosomal disorder we can have is whenever we have something wrong with the entire chromosome itself. So we're not talking about just a gene, we're talking about the entire chromosome and something that's happened. So we can have a change in the number or the structure. And what happens is that because the change of the number of the structure, that means that the genetic material is either lost, there's too much of it, it's in the wrong spot because it's been rearranged, or the genes get switched around. Translocation is whenever we have shifting of genetic material from one chromosome to somewhere else. So here we see in a little picture the arrows. Right, it's saying that the genetic material should be on the black one or the white one, but whenever they came together in fertilization, something happened with translocation so that the white gene got the ends of the black one and the black gene got the ends of the white one. The chromosomes are going to break and rejoin in an abnormal order. So when that happens, it can either be balanced, meaning that you still have all the genetic material, it's just in the wrong positions now, or unbalanced, which means that the genetic material has moved and maybe some of it has gotten lost or out of order too. Another form of chromosomal disorders is called non-disjunction. So non-disjunction is when you don't have two chromosomes at one of those 23 spots. Instead, you have one, three, or more than three. So during cell division, the chromosomes do not replicate and divide as they're supposed to. And that caused an unequal distribution of the chromosomes. So, for instance, trisomy 21, which is commonly called Down syndrome, happens if you look at the top right image there of the gene map. If you look at the 21st spot, there's three chromosomes, which is somy. So trisomy, three chromosomes at the 21st spot. Monosomy would be if you just had one chromosome there, and polysomy is anything more than three. So if you have 4 or 5 or so. Klinefelter's is also an example of non-disjunction, because you end up with too many chromosomes at that gender or the 23rd pair of chromosomes. It's called polysomy X in men. And what happens is their karyotype is XXY. So remember, men should just be XY. What happens in Klinefelter's is they have an extra X. So these men are usually sterile. They have small testicles and penis. They tend to degenerate at puberty instead of grow their testicles. They have sparse body hair and have high-pitched voice. They tend to have some mental impairment, and they may even develop female distribution of fat later in life, which means they get like an hourglass figure and they get some breast tissue. If you look at their karyotype, you see how sometimes you cover up the Y, it's XX, which would be female. And if you cover up the first X, then it's XY. What happens in Klinefelter's is that the body gets confused. Sometimes it reads the karyotype as female, and sometimes it reads it as male. And that's why they end up with some female characteristics. Here's an image of what they look like. Non-disjunction is Turner syndrome, an example in females where it's monosomy, meaning they only have one X in that 23rd spot. So their karyotype is actually XO, with the O representing that there's no other chromosome there. It's about 1 in 2,500 females, and most are actually spontaneously aborted, meaning they're miscarried before they even are born. They have some mental impairment, and then they also have some other conditions too. They tend to be sterile because they don't have any ovaries. They're short and have webbed necks, wide spaced nipples. Their heart is malformed, their aortas are very narrow, has coarse body hair, and their kidneys tend to be underdeveloped. And they never enter puberty again because they don't have ovaries. This would be what their gene map looks like. And here's about Down syndrome. So again, that's where we have 3 chromosomes at the 21st spot. It's the most common chromosomal disorder. It happens in about 1 in 800 to 1,000 births. And we know as women get older and have children later in life, particularly past 35 years old, they tend to be at higher risk. Here's what their gene map looks like today. Now, multifactorial disorders, that's where you have to have both the genetic mutation and environmental factors at the same time in order for the disease to occur. So that means that we don't have the ability to predict it as accurately as we do the other chromosomal disorders, because you don't know what kind of exposure a mother will have whenever she's pregnant and things like that. Cleft lip and cleft palate, for instance, they have to have the genetic markers for it. Plus, they have to be exposed to teratogens, so things like viruses and things that can harm the baby during pregnancy, and some medications that they could take too during pregnancy, like anti-seizure medications, mental health drugs. Some of them can cause cleft lip and palate too. Spina bifida, they have to have the family genetic history, a folic acid deficiency from their diet, be on anti-seizure medications taken during pregnancy, or have uncontrolled diabetes to be at risk. So here's what cleft lip and palate is, and essentially either the lip itself doesn't close, the palate, which is the roof of your mouth, doesn't form and close properly, or you could have both. There's more information here about it on the link. If you're interested, you can look up more. These are some images that you can see. In some cases, it even extends up into the nasal passages. You could have one side affected or both sides of the nasal passages as well. It happens very early in pregnancy, so the lips form on a fetus between the 4th and 7th week of pregnancy, and the palate between the 6th and 9th week. So most women don't tend to find out they're pregnant until about 8 to 10 weeks, and that means all of this has already happened. So unless they were planning on getting pregnant, then they don't know to limit their exposure to these environmental factors. So, for instance, if they don't know that they're wanting to get pregnant and there was an unplanned pregnancy, they're not taking their prenatal vitamins or getting enough folic acid, and they already have the genetic disease, they're at high risk of having a baby with cleft lip and cleft palate. We also recently found out about a year and a half ago that women who smoke during pregnancy and women who have diabetes before they get pregnant are at increased risk of having children with cleft lip and cleft palate. Alright, and you can always email me if you have any questions or concerns.